the background. Hey, Michelle, good to see you. Glad to have you back. How are things
Yeah,
going for
thanks for
you?
coming back.
I
Oh, things are good. Busy, but good.
Yeah, good. Well, let me just for the sake of introduction, just you're a runner, a dietitian. You're on I guess an animal-based diet. I've been on a carnivore diet and done quite well with that. Um, just by anything else we need to know about your background? I know we had you on about 6 months ago
Yeah,
or
I
something
just
like
got my
that. But
book, The Dietitians Dilemma. So just got the
yeah, I
book
wanted
out.
to talk about that for sure. But I mean,
No, background
you're
wise, that's pretty much it.
okay. Are you doing some podcasting with Zach now, or is that what I'm seeing or
Yeah,
no?
yeah, we're doing we're breaking down the book. So we're every chapter, we're getting like an expert. Like we had Dr. Eric Westman for diabetes, and then we had Chris Palmer for mental illness, and we're gonna have Ted Naiman for getting started. So yeah, it's been kind of fun.
Well, good for you. Awesome, awesome.
Thanks.
Well, last time I had heard from you, you'd sort of done a pretty significant run. I think it was a 6 hour run, or you did something like 40 some miles. I can't remember how.
Yeah,
Yeah,
44.63.
and that's like number two in the United States right now, if I'm not mistaken. Was that what it
Yeah,
was?
it was for 2020, and it didn't, like, some people were like, well, races didn't happen in 2020, but it would have been the top 3 over the last 5 years. So it's pretty cool.
So
So
it's a valid race, and so um, and what are you doing? Are you still doing a lot of running now? Is that still part of the plan?
yeah, my June 19th, I have a 12-hour race. Actually, it'll be my first all day, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so the goal for that is to break the course record. The course record is 68 miles, but I'd like to actually, if I can run 9-minute pace, I can run. It'll be cover just a little over 80 miles. So the goal is break the course record is kind of the first goal, but kind of the A goal is to run 80 miles. So
Where's that going to be?
it's actually pretty close to where I live, which is nice. It's only like 2 hours outside of Portland and Eugene. So it's on a 1 mile trail though. So that's a lot of, that's a lot of loops. I can't decide. I don't know if I'm going to like that or not. My last race was 3 mile loops. So, and that felt kind of like a lot, but I mean, I guess the good thing is if, you're always close to your fuel and whatever, but I have a feeling after, 6 or so hours of running in circles, might start to question my sanity, but we'll
Is
see.
there, and it seems like it could get, how many people are on it? Would that course seem to get crowded because you're always lapping people, I would assume. I don't know.
Yeah, the things that the ultras tend to be a little bit smaller. So, I think they're going to cap it at like 500 people. But yeah, I mean, but it's a wide, it's not like a tiny trail, like it's a pretty wide path. So.
Okay. All right. So tell me about how, so do you feel like you're still continuing to improve with your running?
Yeah. It's been such a wild journey. I still have people reaching out to me and asking like, you know, how do you feel on this meat diet? Do you kind of feel like the shoe's going to drop, and initially I didn't know what to expect, right? Like I was brand new to it, but I've noticed that my recovery continues to be really good. My energy continues to be really good. And there's some nuances. Like I've learned, like the longer I run, I definitely benefit from, I do take in some carbohydrates, but I haven't changed a whole lot. It's kind of funny is I've experimented. I've tried to add a few different like protein sources here and there. And you know what? I always come back to beef. Like just for me as an athlete, I've tried like, oh, maybe I need a little more protein, maybe some more chicken and fish. And I think that can be really helpful if you're maybe trying to lean out or lose weight. But for someone who needs like the calories and the iron, I would say that probably the biggest thing that I've changed, maybe even since the last time we've talked, is I'm maybe even a little more strict on organ meats. Like I was a little haphazard about it. Like, oh, I get a little liver here and there, but now I'm very diligent. For me, it's really important. Just I think with the amount of miles I'm running, getting that iron and making sure I am getting, I get at least 6 ounces of liver a week. So a couple ounces 3 times a day, sometimes a little bit more.
Yeah,
But
and liver is an incredibly good source of iron. That's for sure. There's no doubt about it. Did you ever have issues with iron deficiency? Was that something you ever struggled with before?
I did in 2011. And, for most of my life, I was a very high carbohydrate athlete, eating up to 450 plus grams of carbs a day. And in 2011, I actually, I was not feeling well. I was, feeling really kind of dizzy and faint. And I got my ferritin tested and my ferritin was 7. So if anybody's familiar with that, anything below 20 is considered anemic. But I mean, ideally as a female distance athlete, you want to be 75 or above. And so, you know, I was taking iron supplements, but it wasn't working. And my primary care doctor told me that, you know, your body just must not absorb iron well. Well, of course, I was even eating some meat at that point, but I was eating so much oatmeal and, you know, things that have phytic acid, those C's, those beans, that I think any iron I was taking in was just not being absorbed. So I did end up having, I think 6 iron IVs, which helped, you know, it was directly intravenous. My iron went way up, but then it didn't take but another year for it to kind of come back down. So yeah, my whole life, or my whole running career, I guess that's the only time I've really tested it. I really struggled. And since being on the meat-based diet, I've had my blood work done now 3 times, and it's really good. And I don't supplement, you know, I just do the liver.
Yeah, somebody was asking in the chat about, you know, when you're competing, you know, I know Zach will use some sort of carbohydrate source. What are you using? Because you mentioned your fuel station is nearby. What are you using little gels still to do these races, or what do you do? What do you do to get through the race?
No, great question. And I'll have more on this on my social media upcoming. They just actually felt very fancy. They sent a photographer out to my house yesterday. I got to do like a photo shoot. It's kind of cool. I use S Fuels. So S Fuels is a low carbohydrate sports drink. And so what it is, it's basically electrolytes. They have 3 different products. They have a train, race, and a recovery. I guess they have more than that, but those are the ones I use. So I'll use the train before I run. Doesn't matter what the run is, 1 hour easy, 3 hours, 5 hours, because, you know, you want to, when you're starting especially as a high fat, low carb athlete, you know, when you start activity, you don't want to spike your blood sugar. This is what everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people do. It's like, oh, I'm going for a run. I want a granola bar. I want a banana. So what happens? Blood sugar goes up, insulin comes in, and insulin stops you from burning body fat. And if you're trying to lose weight, that's not a great idea. If you're trying to have great endurance, that's not a great idea. You want to be able to like burn fat for fuel. So the train, you know, 1 gram of carbs, protein and fat, I'll have that before I run. And then if I'm doing a really long or intense run, that's when I'll take in some more carbs. That's when I'll take in their product's called Race, and that has 15 grams of carbs. But you know, my 6-hour race, I think the last time we talked about this, I think for the entire 6 hours, I took in like 75 grams of carbs. So it's amazing. And it was really nice because it was so nice to know I'm not going to run out of fuel. Because when I've run marathons in the past as a high carb athlete, oh man, you get dizzy and shaky and your legs just like lock up and you're just like, oh no, running in quicksand. But my pace was really consistent for that entire 6 hours.
Yeah. So 75 grams, that's basically 12 hours, 12 grams an hour. And I think the high carb athletes, if I'm not mistaken, something like 100 grams an hour or something like that is more.
Yeah. It depends on how you are, but yeah, around between 50 and 100 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a significant reduction. So tell us, so the book title is provocative, The Dietitian's Dilemma. What's the dilemma?
Yeah. The dilemma is, what do you do? And it becomes every healthcare provider's dilemma. Like when you discover a low carbohydrate nutrition, when you discover how powerful and how amazing eating meat is, and because when I got my health back, I was like, I got to tell everybody. I'm so excited. Every diabetic person I see, every kidney, like, let's do this. And I was just ready to go, and immediately was told, like, hey, Michelle, like, I'm glad you're feeling good, but we can't teach this. This is not the standard of practice. And, at first, you're ambitious and you're like, okay, well, here's the clinical trials. Here's the information. Let me show you. Let's talk about this. And it's just, we can absolutely not. We're not going to get insurance reimbursement. It's not our hospital policy. And so it's like, what do I do? So I was basically told, like, hey, you have to go into teach diet. You have diabetic patients. The only thing you can teach them is 75 grams of carbs per meal and insulin. Like, that's all you can do. If you teach anything else, you could get in trouble. And it was like, it started to hurt my soul, it was like, can I keep promoting something that I know is not only not helpful, but potentially harmful? And it becomes a huge dilemma, because it's also like, you're going to, it's not cheap to become a dietitian. I had a 4-year degree. I had student loans. I didn't grow up in a family with a lot of money. And so it's like, okay, well, yeah, can you quit your job? Sure. But what do I do now? And then of course, COVID happened, and it's like, okay, well, nobody's hiring. So it was really hard, and it was really sad. And then I would come up against dietitians and other healthcare professionals that were like, look, Carbs are necessary. Carbs are important. Fat is bad for you. Meat causes cancer. You don't want too much protein. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to take disease states that I can really speak well about. So, the book goes through diabetes, mental illness, which I'm really passionate about, eating disorders, sarcopenia, and heart disease. And, I really wanted to be very open and upfront with specifically with mental illness and eating disorders, because I've worked in 2 different psychiatric facilities, and it just breaks my heart what we're feeding our psychiatric patients. And we have all these case studies that people may have insulin resistance in the brain, and they cannot actually use carbohydrates. And what does that mean? Like, you can actually have no insulin resistance in the body. This is fascinating to me. Like, you can be thin and athletic, and this happens all the time, right? People with major depression, people with major anxiety, maybe people with OCD or even post-traumatic stress. They go into their doctor, they get all these tests run, nothing's wrong. Okay, well, let's put you on an antidepressant, an antipsychotic, 2 antidepressants. And then all of a sudden, you're still not getting better. And so, okay, well, I guess you're just going to have to live with this. But now we have case studies, and Dr. Chris Palmer wants to do a clinical trial on this. He's raising funds for this, that people can actually have insulin resistance in the brain, just meaning like they can't use carbs. And so we put these people on ketogenic diets, and guess what? All of a sudden you're using ketones instead of glucose. So the brain communicates. People with major depression get better. People with anxiety get better. People with schizophrenia stop having hallucinations and hearing voices. But we can't do that. I can't even suggest that in the clinical setting right now. Like, it's just, I'm not allowed. So I get so frustrated and I get so angry. And then, as you know, I posted this on my social media. Yesterday or 2 days ago was Registered Dietitian Day. And you would hope that our nutrition experts would take that opportunity, even if they're going to post like an apple or something. All right, cool. Take a selfie with an apple. But I was just appalled by how many registered dietitians posted pictures with, here's me with the donut, here's me with soda, use in moderation. And I'm like, this is nonsense, and this is garbage, and we just have to do better. Like, our patients are diabetic, are obese, they cannot tolerate carbs. Many people are addicted to sugar, and we have supposedly these nutrition professionals, posting with these stuff. So yeah, that was my whole monologue. You can pick any one of those topics you want to dive into.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a lot of those. I think they're all great topics. And, and I basically said yesterday, I put something about, the advice for moderation is basically intellectual laziness. I mean, it doesn't really mean anything. Just eat a little of everything. It's a cop out, really. It's just, I think you have to be more focused and intentional with how you go about treating particular people. And unfortunately, we're in a situation where the vast majority of people, at least in the United States, are not healthy. They all are suffering from some sort of disease or metabolic, compromised state, I suppose, is what that is. Let me ask you, I guess, mental health. I think that's one, and I've interviewed Chris a couple times. Chris Palmer's a great guy. Why, within the realm of, registered dietitians, does mental health get is there any sort of thought on, I've got a patient who's suffering from depression or bipolar or whatever it might be. Is there a nutritional strategy for that? Is it the same as we have diabetics eat 75 grams of carbohydrates? What is there even a position statement from the national bodies about mental health and diet?
To my knowledge, and what we were told to prescribe is just the general healthy diet, which is basically it used to be the food pyramid, now it's the My Plate. So we're told that they need to have a base of healthy whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and using fat sparingly. So to me, that almost just sounds like moderation. That has no direction. That has no. That doesn't really help anything. And in my experience, most people that are dealing with mental health disorders are making some effort. Certainly there are people that get to a point, if you're psychotic, maybe you can't take care of yourself. But most people, they're genuinely trying. There's like, look, I'm trying this Mediterranean diet, or I'm trying to eat low fat foods, and I'm trying to eat fruits and vegetables, and it just doesn't work. And so, the dietitian or, dietitians I've shadowed will really just kind of go in there and, oh, hey, you have a poor appetite, or a lot of people with major depression aren't eating at all. Like, let's send you an Ensure drink, those sugary box drinks, or, we'll just encourage you to eat calories. It doesn't matter, whatever calories. So no, there isn't a really good strategy right now. And the average in one of the facilities I worked in, you basically, it's not like most hospitals now, patients get to kind of select what they want, but psychiatric patients usually get like A or B. Like, you can have this or this, they can just circle one. And both choices, are pretty poor. The average amount of teaspoons of sugar a day we send to our psychiatric population is between 38 and 42. So, and that's just what they get in the meals. And most nurses and psychiatric units will tell you there's hot chocolate, there's granola bars, there's graham crackers, there's puddings, there's all kinds of things. It's really, really sad and really hard. And interestingly, I was thinking about this. I had one example. There was one guy that he was put on a carb restricted diet, but he actually it was strange. He had a lot of food aversions and food fears. But he ended up just eating like meat. And this was before, I was even involved in an all meat diet. And I remember I saw him, once, and when he first got there, and then I saw him like 2 months later, and he was like kind of a different person. I remember being shocked. I remember thinking, like, what medication? Like, he had a very coherent conversation with me. He had lost a bunch of weight. And I remember the doctors were worried, like, man, he hasn't really had any carbs in a long time. And he's just been eating all this, these hamburger patties and eggs. And now, like, stuff like makes sense. Like, why aren't we doing this, for all of our psychiatric populations, or at least presenting it as an option, right? So, yeah, I really hope that Chris gets his study funded. For every book I sell, I'm donating, or donating a percentage to that. And because if we can get those pilot studies done, they already want to do more studies. They're just kind of waiting for a pilot to be done. And then if we can at least present that as an option to people, I think that will start to kind of get the ball rolling for mental health.
Yeah, and it's an absolute travesty that we don't consider nutritional approaches more, because I mean it's very reflexive just to put a medication on it, and as a they have a lot of side effects, and they often don't work like they don't really work much at all in many cases. But I've got Sarah commenting about, as a patient, there was basically no no options really given to her. Let me ask you about so diabetes. I mean, I think that's starting to be recognized. I mean, even in the general community. I mean, the ADA position, I think the president of the ADA, American Diabetes Association, is I believe a type 2 diabetic who's on a low carb or ketogenic diet herself. And so we're seeing a little bit of traction within diabetes circles. Is that, I mean, I guess, are you still practicing registered dietitian stuff within the confines of a hospital practice or whatever you're doing before?
No, I'm not. I last year during COVID, first I lost all my dietitian hours because I was the new person, and they put me in the call center where I had to take phone orders, people calling in, patients ordering food. And that just was like heartbreaking. You have diabetics calling in because they could get 75 to 90 grams of carbs per meal, and it was whatever you wanted. So you have diabetic patients saying, all right, I want potato chips, a caramel macchiato, and a brownie. So that didn't last very long. And then, I went and worked at Scratch Meats. I went and worked in the butchery. And then now that was a seasonal job, I took some time to finish writing the book. And now I'm actually looking at potentially going into some like body work, being like a stretch practitioner or some type of massage therapy. So I'm always kind of figuring out what I want to do when I grow up. So, I love being a dietitian, and I love nutrition, but if there was a place where I could really practice and teach low carb, I think I'd be excited about that. But yeah, for right now, it's just, you can't do it in the hospital setting. And it's interesting, sometimes I'll have recruiters see my, my review on LinkedIn and reach out and like ask me, like, hey, we really need a dietitian. And I'm like, well, I got to tell you what I believe and think. And they're like, well, thank you for your time. Like I can't be a cog in the wheel. I know too much and I care too much. So yeah, I don't, at least at this point in time, I won't be going back into that type of setting.
Yeah, I remember at one point I can't remember who it was, some company out of LA that was starting this big clinic, and they wanted me to be involved somehow. And I started chatting with them, to kind of feel them out. And they said, they were advocates of plant-based diets. And I said, you obviously have not done your research if you're talking to me. And I told him, hey, and of course I didn't hear back from those folks. It was kind of funny. I was just like, yeah, well, you might want to investigate what I
Yeah, it is kind of funny.
what I
If
talk about.
if you Google my name, but yeah, I even had a company that said, hey, they will offer you, especially as a contracted dietitian, like a pretty intense amount of money, like way more than you'll make in, butchery or anything. We like, hey, Michelle, 1 day a week, we need you to come in and we literally just need you to sign. We need you to sign off that these meals are okay for diabetics. And well, what are they? Oh, well, they're 300 grams of carbs. You got to find someone else. Like, I got to sleep at night, but yeah, it's challenging, but like you said, you have to, at least in my experience, and I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but it means a lot to me to be authentic and to be real and to be, practicing what I preach, living what I preach. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to go into a situation like that.
Yeah, and I guess, and I don't know if this precludes it or if it's because there's a difference between a nutritionist and nutritional therapy practitioner and a registered dietitian. I mean, could you do nutritional therapy outside of the regulations of that if you wanted to? Is that something you
Oh
could
yeah.
do?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and I don't know. I think the definition nutritionist doesn't have any like legal definition. A lot of dietitians like lose their mind, oh my God, this nutritionist, like half the health coaches and nutritionists are way better than dietitians. But I could, I don't do any like personal coaching right now. Well, I shouldn't say I don't do any. Every once in a while, someone will reach out and I'm like, all right, we can talk or whatever. But generally, when people reached out to me, I'll pass them on to one of the health coaches, I have in my book, just because I've got a lot of projects kind of in motion right now. We're trying to get the book on Audible, running like a crazy person, and just trying to see what happens next. But yeah, I definitely could. And I know a lot of people that just get frustrated, dietitians that will become a nutritional therapist and open their own practice, or that will just go under the title nutritionist and use what they've learned and what the knowledge they've kind of gained through ketogenic or carnivore nutrition.
Yeah, and I guess we saw that. I think we saw a similar thing, during this. If you go back to this coronavirus pandemic, you go back to say around February, March, and there was a number of physicians that were saying we're under a lot of stress and showing how proud they were to eat their donuts and stuff like that, or they were flashing all the junk food they were eating. And some people said, hey, that's probably not the right message. And then the other people said, oh, shut up, they're just doing their job and let them have fun. And then, come to find that, well, we knew it all along. 6 months, a year later, they're saying 80% of the people that have succumbed to this or gotten very sick have been struggling with obesity. So maybe it's not the best message to tell people to eat donuts and that type of thing. And I know the people say, well, it doesn't matter as long as the calories are equated. But I think in the reality is, it's very difficult to moderate junk food. It just doesn't work very well. I mean, that's why the junk food companies are in existence, because people cannot stop eating them. And I think, once you sort of say, okay, look at me, I'm eating this stuff, it just sort of, I think it encourages people to do that. I mean, I think there's no, I'd rather see someone holding up an apple than a donut. I'd rather see him holding up a ribeye steak than a piece of fish than either of those. But regardless, I think sort of doing this. And when you look at the funding sources for these national, dietitian bodies or some of the other health bodies, I mean, it's clearly drug companies get in there and put money in there, food companies put in there, and a lot of these processed food companies. Did you ever, was that ever obvious to you? Is it cloaked? Is it in the background? I mean, if you dig it hard enough, you can see, hey, look, who funded this sponsored by, and you can see pretty quickly. Was that something you could see pretty obviously? Was it in the open, or is it something that's kind of hidden from the practitioners?
No, it's in the open. So ever since I became a dietitian in 2009, and even back then, Coca-Cola was our number one sponsor, and I very loudly said, like, I can't, because you don't have to be a member of the academy to become a registered dietitian. Of course, they encourage it. It's like $250 a year, and it's like, oh, we give you access to all these articles, and it's like, I can't give you money knowing I don't feel good about this. It doesn't feel right, But then I felt like, okay, well, I went through school, I got this knowledge, now I have my RD, so I'm not going to prescribe Coca-Cola, but I still was under the impression that we needed lots of carbs and grains and all this stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I've had a big problem like Fancy, which is the food, conference, like their major conference they have, the Academy has, I think it's every 2 years. I mean, they're often sponsored by McDonald's. In 2019, they were sponsored by GlaxoSmithKline, the company that makes all the prescription drugs. And I've talked, I mean, I've been like, hey, other dietitians, like, do you see a problem here? And most people are kind of like, yeah, but it's kind of like, well, what exactly are we supposed to do about it? And I was told over and over again that, like, you're not going to change. You're not going to change the nutrition guidelines. You're not going to change, people are lazy. And that's why I was like, okay, well, yes, maybe I'm one person. I can't change the nutrition guidelines. But I can advocate what I know, and I can teach what I know. And if I can't do it within this confines, then I'll step away and, I'm going to write a book. And it was funny when I first started talking about writing a book, people are fun. People aren't always kind, when you're different, when you stand out and say, like, this isn't right, a lot of times I think it makes people kind of analyze themselves. Because I've shared on other, podcasts that, at least 60% of the dietitians I've worked with are obese, not overweight, clinically obese. And so me stepping back and saying, like, hey, I'm going to write a book because what we're doing isn't right. I think, people immediately are like, oh, crap. if she's right, then I'm wrong. And I want, that means I need to change, and I don't want to change. So I'd rather just hold on to my, sugar in moderation. And so yeah, I had a lot of people tell me, like, oh, I'm going to write a book too, but I think you stick to what you know and you trust and you believe in, and you put your heart into something, and, people will come around, because most people know what we're doing isn't working. We have lots of statistics, diabetes is like, and like obesity, depression. So it's like, hey, why don't we look at, a different approach? And I really had to be careful, because when I first started, the first draft of my book was not particularly kind. It was very angry and maybe had some name calling in there. And so I had to kind of dial it back, because, I didn't always know. And I sometimes forget that you don't know what you don't know, So I wanted to make sure that I was giving people, like, hope. I was giving people information, and just kind of presenting it in a way that's like, hey, look at this. This is interesting. This makes sense. Like, turn on your critical thinking hat. Are we sure that meat is bad and causes cancer? I mean, we've been eating it for, 3.5 million years. Are we sure that keto is a fad? Because we've kind of been doing it since the beginning of evolution. And I think most people are curious for that type of information.
I'm just curious about, the statement 60% of dietitians, I mean, maybe in your circles, were clinically obese. I mean, that's higher than the population in the US. I mean, the US population, I think it's 42% right now. And then I know I can't remember if you told me this before, but I think I've seen that a number of dietitians actually have eating disorders. I mean, that's what sometimes attracts them to the field, because they want to study their own pathology. But if that's true, 60%, again, that seems high. I mean, I've seen, and certainly I've seen, it seems like many of the dietitians online that are popular do not appear overweight. They seem to be in pretty good shape. But again, we don't see all of them. And so yeah. Is that really accurate, that there's that many that are dealing with obesity?
Oh, probably not. No, I mean, that's just the way, like, I worked in a few different places. So I would say statistically, it's probably closer to the national average, or a little bit less, because if you look online, I mean, unfortunately, I guess it's a lot of lean white women, it's a few men, a few people of color. But I think, in general, that would be it, I would say. But there are quite a few dietitians who are overweight or obese. I would say it's probably closer to 20 to 30%. Many people have eating disorders. I certainly struggled with an eating disorder when I was much younger. And so, you're interested in nutrition and health, maybe potentially not only to help others, but to see, like, hey, can I heal myself? Can I help myself? And it's hard, it's hard to be in a field that it doesn't work. You're trying all these things, you're doing what you think you should or you're supposed to, and you're not seeing results. I mean, my biggest frustrations, even before I struggled with my own health, was I just wasn't seeing results in my own patients. I wasn't, I was working in acute care. So it wasn't like I was, following the same person over time, but you'd see someone, you see them 3 months later, it's like, wow, your A1C is worse. Or now you have another episode of kidney failure. Oh God, we got to amputate another foot, So I think we really have to, as dietitians, maybe check your ego, take a step back, take a deep breath, and be like, okay, this isn't working. And I also think it's really unfortunate Maybe you are, you're a new dietitian, you're in your early 20s, you're metabolically healthy. So you can get away with having, a donut or a pizza or whatever, but thinking that message is going to help people who are diabetic or depressed or obese is really not good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, in my understanding, I mean, outside of, acute hospital setting when, you just got to feed people, if you're setting up TPN or something like that, total parenteral nutrition, for you guys who don't know, that's just sticking food in through blood, basically, but through an IV. But, the majority of the people that physicians send to you are people that have some sort of illness. Now, generally it's obesity. I mean, that's what probably the number one reason to referral for a dietitian would be, I would think, maybe diabetes too, but they often run hand in hand unless you're dealing maybe with a type 1. But so, and you don't have very good success. And I can tell you, doing this, I mean, I'm literally here every single day trying to, create this community. And we have this community is building upon itself, and they provide support to themselves every single day. And sometimes that's what it takes. But I don't know that most dietetics or dietitians or, hospital things are not set up that way, are they? I mean, you don't have, I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know why is it on, I mean, it could be this wrong dietary advice, which many of us would argue that's the case. But beyond that, I think maybe we don't even have the right amount of funding or support funneled into this stuff.
100%. Yeah. I mean, excuse me, I think you nailed a few things. One, I mean, first you're starting with the wrong advice. And if somebody, if we get consulted, like working in acute care, if you get consulted, I mean, your only mission is to make sure someone has enough protein and calories. Like they could be diabetic, they could whatever, and you're literally for their acute need. Like, oh, hey, you've had a poor appetite. Hey, you've maybe had some weight loss. We're not really supposed to address, because often they have a laundry list. It's like, okay, well, you have hypertension, depression, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, heart failure. It's like, I'm just here to tell you to drink a Boost or, Ensure, and good luck. And because, I mean, we're given like 5 minutes and then you have to chart for 45 minutes. And I would struggle because, I was like, okay, while I'm here, let's talk about your diabetes. Let's talk about, but you're really, I mean, you're not allotted that much time. And then, like you said, okay, so support. And this is why I love, people ask me all the time, like, is it worth investing in a health coach, or why can't I do that on my own? I mean, I'm 37. I've been running since I was 14, and I have a coach, my coach. Zach is my coach, because that accountability piece, that support piece, because I feel like as a runner, I know what I'm doing, but you need someone to kind of like help you troubleshoot, to keep you on the path to, what happens if maybe you hit a plateau, right? So there isn't that support and that structure. So first of all, we start people with terrible advice. And let's just say we started someone with great advice. Like, let's say Renegade Michelle goes in there and says, all right, we're going to talk about a low carb diet. I'm going to chart that I talked about a high carb diet. So if someone asks you, that's what you say, not that I've ever done that, but just hypothetically. And then the patient gets excited about it, but then they go home and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure how to do this. Okay, well, crap, I'll just eat cereal. It's like you almost need that accountability. Like, how do I get started? Where's my community? And, there's of course, there's the narrative that like, well, that's expensive, but it's like, in this country, we spend so much on healthcare. If we could just invest, if I was Jeff Bezos or, I don't know, Bill Gates, instead of Bill Gates creating all this fake meat, if he could say, all right, we're going to buy instead of like, spending all this money on insulin for our type 2 diabetics, what if we bought everybody, a bunch of meat and cheese, and we had a nutritionist with them every day for 3 months or something, or doing a call with them or something? I mean, you could reverse the health of this nation really quickly. And I would argue even you would save money on the back end, but you do have to help people get started, and you do have to help people establish habits, because if not, we just know statistically people are going to kind of slide back. So yeah, someone just said no money. Yeah, it really is. And I know that that's the frustrating thing, is we're just fighting. And that's why I don't think we're going to see major changes at the top, just because there's so much money. And that's why I think we have to kind of grassroots and kind of keep advocating, and kind of like one person at a time. Right. Because yeah, I mean, there's a lot of money, and Shawn, as a doctor, keeping people sick and doing elective surgeries, and insulin makes a lot of money for a lot of companies.
Yeah, I was able to make a lot of money as a surgeon. I mean, that it was a very, I mean, it's, I'm not to sort of discount the training and the hard work that you put in to become a surgeon. I mean, it's certainly there, but I mean, at the same point, the amount of good I did for humanity as a whole, and even individuals, is far less than I'm able to do now just by advocating for diet and lifestyle, which is, and the financial difference is huge. I'm not even close. I mean, I'm not even close to where I was, as a surgeon, but at the same time, I'm for every order of magnitude less financially successful I've been, I'm that much more happier. So hopefully that'll at some point start to
Yeah,
scale up at some point. But
I hope that too.
anyway,
Not being able to work, focusing on a book, and the geniuses at Amazon don't pay you for 90 days, and so it's someday, hopefully. But I agree, like it really does my heart good. People reach out and say, like, I read your book, it touched me, it made me understand, I'm gonna give it to so and so. And it's like, I never had that. I would come home from the hospital and just cry and be like, what am I doing? How am I helping humanity? I feel like I'm hurting people. Or you would try so hard to talk to people, and then I've shared before that I was actually suspended. The one time a patient got really excited about a low carb diet, and we got talking about it, and they told their nurse told my director, and it was like, oh no, there this goes. So yeah, the fact that I get to now talk freely, I get to write, I get to advocate, and I had someone tell me once, like, oh, when you go on stuff, you talk about your book. Well, heck yeah, this is my job, you guys. So, it's not that I'm promoting something I believe in. So, but yeah, I'm grateful for what I do, but I wouldn't mind winning the lottery.
Right. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, you hopefully get someone that has a lot of resources to invest in this sort of stuff. And I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a top-down thing, because I think the top is influenced too much unduly by pharmaceutical companies and other vested interests that have, we look at the federal lobbying dollars at, something like $300 million a year that pharmacy, they out lobby anybody else in the entire federal government. And that's just reported federal under the table. And I mean, they're just buying everybody off that they possibly can, including these, dietitian organizations and, diabetes and heart disease organizations. Let's talk a little bit about the book. So, what is the kind of the flow of the book? What do you go into through that?
Yeah, so I start with my story. It was really important to me. Like, I had at certain times in my life thought, like, I'm going to write a whole book about what it's like to live with an eating disorder, or certainly what it was like, kind of how I personally, I was very, very young. I was 12 when I was really sick, because I've read books before, and I just, I didn't feel like anything like captured like the magnitude of like despair. Like, I wanted to really show not just that I went through this really difficult, horrible time, but I wanted to kind of validate other people's experiences. Because, I've talked to people, and people have shared just really intimate details of how embarrassing it is, how shameful it is, how lonely it is. So, my wife hates it. She wouldn't help me edit the first chapter. She said it makes her too sad. So it's not, the first chapter is kind of sad if you've read it. It's not, my beginning of my life was not particularly happy, but it has a happy ending, right? So here we are. So it goes into my stories first, and then I'm immediately just kind of dive into, like I said, those 5 disease states that I felt like, and I could not only speak really well. We have lots of clinical trials. I have a really long works cited on the back of the book. Diabetes, mental illness, eating disorders, sarcopenia, and heart disease. And eating disorders was also something that it's not popular to talk about. It's not popular to suggest that a low carb, high fat diets can help people with bulimia, with binge eating disorder, because the current dogma is everything fits. To recover, we need to be able to eat everything from chicken breast to candy bars. And I really wanted, as a young person, I embraced that. I wanted to believe that. But the truth is that certain foods affect not just our body. Certainly when you eat something really dense and processed, you get the blood sugar rush and crash, but they also change your neurochemistry in your brain. I cite a lot of studies that, unfortunately, when you're eating a ton of processed carbs, they can actually shift glutamate specifically, make it go really, really high in the brain, which can actually prevent your brain from coping from stress. So think about it, you're dealing with binge eating disorder or bulimia, and you're really trying, and you end up, eating these processed foods, and because they're so hyper palatable, maybe you overeat, And not only do you feel, you get that blood sugar spike and crash, at the same time, you get a dopamine hit. So initially you might feel really good, but then, it shifts that neurochemistry in your brain to where glutamate is really high, and your brain can actually not only cope with stress, but it's kind of long in chemistry-ish, but basically your brain can't engage in neuroplasticity, meaning your brain can't change and mold. So here you are maybe trying to go to therapy and learn all these new coping skills, but your brain can't actually take in that new information. It's kind of like that saying, it goes in one ear and out the other. Like, your brain has to be able to process. They've actually seen really high levels of glutamate in suicide victims and people with addictions. And so I cite that. There's research. This isn't me making this stuff up. And that was something I wasn't taught as a dietitian either. Oh, wow, maybe we shouldn't be recommending cupcakes and cookies to people with these disorders. And that certainly isn't to say somebody who's very, very massively underweight. And I want to make sure I say this, I don't want people to be afraid of carbohydrates or afraid of, maybe things that aren't, animal based. Number one resource to save your life. If you're, in a very dangerous situation and you need to be weight restored, there are certainly times and places for maybe higher carbohydrate intakes. But when it comes to long-term recovery, the statistics on eating disorders are not good. Anorexia has the highest mortality rate of any eating disorder. And when I was digging into the research, I found it really profoundly sad that many of the people, I think it was 20% in the meta-analysis, that people that died of anorexia took their own life. It wasn't just either they, too underweight or they took their own life. And the rate of relapse was 43%. And they said relapse is I went back into treatment. If you're saying the rate of I engaged in behaviors, it's 100%. I would say, I certainly have throughout my life. So it's maybe once again, we need to look if these processed carbohydrates and these seed oils are really affecting our brain, maybe as dietitians and medical practitioners, it makes more sense to say, okay, eating this way, can really help you. It's not restrictive. Getting your anxiety reduced and living a full life is not restrictive.
Yeah, I'm into that. And just because you mentioned that, you said, what is the mortality rate or for someone who's suffering from anorexia nervosa? What do we know what that is?
Oh, shoot. I don't know offhand. I know it's the highest though of any psychiatric.
Okay.
And we do know that psychiatric illnesses, regardless of what you have, you lose years of your life.
Sure.
My mental illness chapter, it's about a third of your life you lose. And it's not, people think if you have a depression or if you have bipolar disorder, you must be taking your life. But statistically, actually, people with mental illnesses are dying from heart disease. That's the number one cause of not only death of the population, but of mental illness. Well, what causes heart disease? What do we know? Occluded arteries. What causes your arteries to occlude? Well, it's inflammation in the arteries, which is caused by hyperglycemia. So it's all connected. That was another thing I really wanted to do in the book, was kind of connect things, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that not only is it the actual number of years shortened, but the quality of life, obviously, the time you spend enjoying life as someone with mental illness is going to be restricted as well. It doesn't matter how many days you have when you don't enjoy them. Let me ask you about, so you said at the beginning, you said you went into a couple things: diabetes, mental health disorders, eating disorders. There was a couple more in there that sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia.
Let's talk a little bit about sarcopenia, because and I do this in a, I guess, I would say playful, almost a little bit of a mean way when I go after Dr. Grieger, because I'm always using him as whenever I have a study that sort of pushes back on the vegan dogma, I just like to use him as a foil for the study. But what are the concerns around sarcopenia? Are we under addressing sarcopenia? And the other thing, Ensure. That is awful. Why do we push Ensure on these patients? Does no one even read the ingredients label on that?
Yeah, I need to make another post about that. I have one. Well, first, let me address your first thing, and then I'll talk a little bit about Ensure. So yeah, if you just say sarcopenia, I feel if you say diabetes, pretty much everybody knows what that is, right? But if you say sarcopenia, not everybody knows what sarcopenia is, but it's a huge problem. And basically what that means is muscle wasting. And, I share in the book, and I'm sure you saw this in your practice, I have patients that are so overly fat and under muscled that they can't even get up and walk a few steps to the bathroom. Like they have to have a nurse, put a toilet under them, or, maybe have two CNAs help them. And it's not like, oh, well, this is Grandpa Joe and he's 90. These patients are 40. I had someone in their 30s. These are young people. And certainly as you get older, the statistics for sarcopenia, I think it's over the age of 80, it's like 50%. It's not good. But there's two problems. One, our protein recommendations are pretty much like the same across the lifespan. So if you're a healthy 18-year-old male, it's 0.08 grams per kilogram. If you're a, age 85-year-old, it's 0.08 per kilogram. And we have plenty of trials that say like, that's not enough protein. After the age of 30, you no longer synthesize protein as well, meaning your body doesn't use it as well. And we also often see that as people get older, their appetite decreases. And, most people listening to this, if you have an elderly parent or grandparent, what are they eating in the morning? Are they getting up and having a steak? Are they fasting until lunch and then having a steak? No, they're having, toast and sugary coffee, or they're having a Danish or a bagel. And then, maybe they have a little bit of protein, but it's, lots of other sugary, starchy things. It's like, oh, grandma wants her applesauce. And so our elderly population is not getting enough protein. They're getting flooded with carbohydrates, and then also just really minimal physical activity. And we know statistically too that leads to, like, you're getting all this fat, you're losing muscle, and then often people suffer a fall or a major, complication, a disease, and then your quality of life is just shot. Like, people don't recover. It's like 67% of people that break a hip don't get back to their previous quality of life. That's kind of like the doom and gloom message, right? But the hopeful message is we've seen people, as old as like 80, like turn it around. Just say like, okay, I'm over fat. I'm going to change. I'm going to start eating differently. I'm going to start doing very simple, I'm going to walk a little bit. And within months of just really flooding their body with protein and flooding their body with fat, and really reducing those carbohydrates, they're able to gain muscle. They're able to lose fat. It's really incredible what changing the way you eat can do. But it's so bad in the hospital. Sarcopenia is just a really, really big problem.
Yeah, and somebody was questioning the dietary recommendations. It's 0.8 grams per kilogram. So it's about, not even half a gram per pound, which is, what are you thinking about protein requirements? Is it that 0.8, does that number trouble you at all?
Troubles me extremely. Some scientists and researchers have asked for it to be moved to at least 1 or 1.3. And there's always pushback. There's immediately pushback. And I was kind of, I was researching that. I was like, who's pushing back? Like, who cares? But then, who pushes back is processed food companies. Because if we eat more protein, likely you're going to eat less of the junk, right? I think it should be at least 2. Honestly, I think it should be 2 grams per kilogram, or 1 gram per pound is like minimum. Because, we know what happens when we eat protein. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. And also we have studies that even people who quote unquote overate protein, right? They got more calories than theoretically they needed to maintain their weight. If those calories came from protein, they didn't gain weight, and then of course, the protein is so much more than just muscle. Like, everybody's like, protein and muscle, but it's like protein does all kinds of things, you guys. It's active in your immune system and your hormonal functions. It helps your cells communicate. Like, it does all kinds of things. And so to me, it's like the less you get over time, like basically the worse your health is going to be. So it's very, very difficult to overdo the protein, when you're eating it. Certainly you could, you'll have someone message you on Twitter that's like, oh, you can take all this whey protein and get sick. Well, yeah, if you sit there and put it in a blender, you could. But if you're just eating actual protein, it's very difficult to overdo it. And of course, there is an exception. If you are in end-stage renal disease, not on dialysis, then that's a situation you may need to restrict your protein. So the goal should be to not be in end-stage renal disease, which can, be prevented by not, in most cases, unless you have, some other inflammatory disease, can be prevented by not becoming diabetic.
Yeah, and I would even say that the data that supports restricting protein, even in the setting of advanced kidney disease, is not particularly robust. And there's actually data that would counter that. We talked about Ensure. So that is
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
I used to, and when I was in the hospital, I didn't think about it. I didn't know. I didn't know any better. I'd see the old folks sucking down their Ensures and good job, you're getting your whatever, your vitamins and protein. Is that still pretty much used or something similar on the hospital formularies for food?
Yeah, it depends who the hospital goes through. It's either Ensure or Boost. I mean, it's basically the same thing. Are you Nestle or Abbott? Yeah, but you have Ensure, you have Ensure Plus, you have Ensure Glucose Control, which is just a little bit less carbs, but it still has carbs. They just came out with something, I want to say it was called like Boost Soothe. And it's really interesting. I looked on the back and it had like 45 grams of carbs, but it said only like 10 grams of sugar. And I was like, where are all these other carbs coming from? Well, there's some labeling loopholes where things like brown rice syrup don't even have to be labeled as sugar. And to me, that's ridiculous. And I actually called the rep for Boost and kind of pretended I wasn't a dietitian. And I was just asking, I was like, oh, can I talk to your dietitian? And I finally got through. And I said, yeah, my patient is diabetic and I'm just concerned. Does this have too much, this looks like this is sugar. What are your thoughts? And she said like, oh, well, all of our products can be used for certain disease states. And I was like, oh no, but I want to know your thoughts. And she's like, well, all of our products can be used for certain disease states. And I was like, oh, she's reading a script. She's reading a script. You've sold out. I mean, I get it. I get it. They pay Abbott and Kellogg's, they pay their dietitians, $40-50 an hour. But I was just like, oh, lady, come on, do better. But anyway, the point being that if you're in like there's certain situations where I don't think something like that is the worst thing in the world. And I put this even on my Instagram, like if you're, we have patients that come in with like major burns that need like massive amounts of calories. Like this is probably not the time to worry about sugar, carbs restriction, right? That is probably less than 5% of patients though. For the 95% of patients, they need protein. They need real foods. And if you can't tolerate food, you're just sick to your stomach, then you need maybe a straight protein powder. You don't need something that has 30 grams of sugar. I mean, it literally is. I always ask people, I'm like, would you take, dump it, like put it in a blender. Would you put a cup of water, 1, 2, 3, like 10 teaspoons of sugar, and then, a little bit of milk and blend it. Would you drink? Oh, and a vitamin, throw a vitamin pill in there. Would you drink that? Would you feed that to grandma? No, of course I wouldn't. That's what you're giving 2 or 3 times a day. And we even have research that says when people drink those, they tend to eat less real food, so it's just a bad precedent. I'm not totally against, for those very rare situations where you just need calories, but in general, I want to see people eat. I want to see people eat whole foods, eat actually like how humans are supposed to. Because in my experience, that's the only way to heal. It's the only way to heal.
Yeah, and the other thing about these Ensure products, I think they have a lot of soybean oil or something as well as a fat source or something.
Usually called corn oil, yeah.
Corn oil or something like that. Yeah, it's just, I mean, gosh, I would rather just, like I said, if I was going to do that, take a regular old whey protein and throw that in a blender with some, some milk or water or something like that. And here's your protein if you can't get it any other way. But yeah, definitely the whole food sources are far superior to that. Let me just, gosh, it's already been an hour almost. Wow, this went by fast. Let me ask you, can you, like, again, let us know about your book, where to get it, where to follow you, or let us know, all those types of things so people can find out some more.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called The Dietitians Dilemma, and it is right now it's on Amazon. So I bought just the paperback book and I have the ebook. So yeah, just Amazon Dietitians Dilemma. And we're working on the Audible version. I've had a lot of people request that. So that's the next process. So hopefully that'll be out by the summer. And you can follow me on Instagram at Run, Eat, Meet, Repeat. I'm also on Twitter, Michelle Hurn RD. And on my Instagram too, I have all the links for like studies, clinical trials that I'm looking into, products I support. And yeah, that's kind of my stuff.
And when is this 12-hour race going to happen?
Oh, the 12-hour race is scheduled for June 19th. So I'll have updates. Might even live stream a little bit of it. So if you're around June 19th between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. and want to see me suffering along, no, hopefully it'll be really exciting. And yeah, I'll be posting a lot about it.
Is that, are you doing any races in the interim, or is that it? Or that you just, cause I know like Zach likes to do like training races, which are just kind of he calls them B races, or he just kind
Yeah,
of
no,
does a fun run.
and like last year we had so much stuff scheduled and it just kept getting like axed off the calendar and axed off just because things got canceled. So I have on the end of this month. So I think it's the 27th, whatever the last Saturday of this month, I have a 50K. So a 31 mile, it's not an actual race, but me and a few friends are going to be doing some loops. So that the goal will be to do about 7:45-minute mile pace for 31 miles. But yeah, I'm hoping in, into 2021, certainly in 2022, I'll actually be able to schedule some just like races to do just to train. But right now there's just not a whole lot going on, so we just kind of keep our fingers crossed that like the races we do sign up for happen. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it's a tough time to be an athlete right now for some sports for sure. I know we've had several athletes come on. It's been a struggle this year, but hopefully that gets better. All right. Well, Michelle, thank you very much. Any last minute thing you want to share before we go?
No, thank you, Shawn. Thank you. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, good luck to hopefully the book sells real well. And anytime you want to come back in, we're always excited to have you here. Okay.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
See you guys tomorrow, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.